Hi, and welcome to 5.06 lesson Texas, the Lone Star Republic. In this lesson, you're going to learn a little bit more about America's westward expansion and particularly how that developed around the territory of what we now know as Texas, the state of Texas. But Texas wasn't always part of the United States. In fact, the area we now have as Texas was originally considered to be Mexico. Eventually, after many settlers from the United States swarmed into this territory, became at odds with the Mexican government, and with a war between those settlers and the Mexican government, won their own independence, and that's how they became known as the Lone Star Republic. They had their own country for a little while with the Lone Star symbol there. That was their flag when Texas was an independent governing nation, but only for a short time, and then the United States did annex Texas. But you're going to find out why this was such a trying process, why the annexation of Texas, once it had won its independence, was very controversial, and really what this meant for the rest of the country. In fact, it would continue to tear it apart and bring us closer and closer to civil war. So our goals for this lesson are to trace the major events from 1820 to 1836 leading up to Texas independence. Your reading for today's lesson are on pages 376 to 379. You do have a reading guide with this lesson, and as I always say, make sure that you go into your lesson slides here, download the reading guide, print it off, and fill it in. You're likely going to have to write on a printed version of it, as you usually can't type onto it. I do not I do not collect these assignments. Everybody uses them a little differently, but again, as many students are learning, you cannot skip this step. It is the way to identify what you are not understanding and make sure that you get the key information you will be tested on down. Okay, so let's take a look at pages 376 to 379. Once you have your reading guide printed off, you could dive right into your textbook and take a look at our reading. One of the things that I usually find helpful to do while I'm reading in the textbook is to take a look primarily at the headings, just so I can understand what I'm going to be reading about, and I also take a look at the images that are included. They might give me some clues about some new words, some new phrases, some new topics that I might know a little bit about or I might not know anything about. So, as I could see just from taking a look at the headings here, I know I'm going to be reading about Texas, from Mexican territory to Lone Star Republic. So that tells me originally Texas wasn't part of the United States. It was part of Mexico, and because it becomes its own governing system, just what we just said. And I can get all that just from reading the heading. We can also see that somebody named Stephen Austin is important, mostly Americans in Texas, so I'm assuming there were a lot of people, Americans in the Texan region for some reason or another. We're probably going to have to figure out why. Toward independence, uh, Texas apparently is going to have a battle or a process towards independence. And of course, we have the Battle of the Alamo. So as you're reading, you can see that you're going to learn about the key figures in the process of settling this area that is now known as Texas, how many Americans acted as immigrants or were immigrants from the United States into Texas territory, which was owned by Mexico. We have to find out what happened that got the Texans upset again with the Mexican government, wanting them. Making them want to declare independence because something went awry there. Then we have the major battles of this war for independence between the Texans and the Mexican government. Again, at this time, they have not yet won their independence. They were still considered part of Mexico. And then finally, over here in this portion of your textbook on page 379, we see that Texas is then referred to the Lone Star Republic, meaning it was a republic in its own right, a sovereign country or nation. So finally, we have over here the start of Polk's administration, which will be part of your next reading for the course that will go further into territorial expansion. But for our purposes, we are only going to read up until Polk's expansionist agenda. We're going to stop there for the next lesson. Okay. So once we have read and filled out our reading guide, we're going to come in here See, it says after you finish reading, follow the directions in the student guide and create a timeline of Western expansion. Now, this particular assignment is not due for you. I'm not going to be collecting this, but you can do the timeline activity here in the course. It's great practice, and this can also be something that you revisit before the test to come back and review. Okay, so um, basically, you give it a title here, and then give it a year, some text, and add an image. Okay, so you're going to come up with several events that happened on the timeline of Western expansion between 1820 and 1836, as you learned in this lesson. Very similar to what we did in the 312 just in time written activity. Okay, so you can just go through the slides and finish that activity. Now, the checkpoint that you have to do for this lesson is very important because it is tied to your reading guide. So, again, those reading guides do pay off in credit in that you can answer your checkpoints from them. Okay, so 5.06 has two questions. In what year did Moses Austin receive a land grant from the Spanish government? 1800, 1812, 1820, or 1836? The second question for the checkpoint is why did Andrew Jackson not pursue the annexation of Texas? Was it because he wanted to avoid war with Mexico? That he didn't want a free territory, a slave territory problem? It looked as though Spain might reconquer Mexico? Or was it that Texas did not have a large enough population? Once you've completed the checkpoint, click Save to save your answers and then submit for grading. Always check in your grade book that this turned up successfully and that you did get the credit for your assignment. If there's a problem, please contact me right away. Good luck with your lesson 506, Texas, the Lone Star Republic, and your checkpoint. As always, please contact me with any questions.